Okay, so we're going to be working on a lidded container. It's going to be able to open and close. You're going to be able to put something inside. Specifically, you download from a website, which sounds sketchy when you say it that way, but I'm going to show you some different file sharing websites and such. We just went over the requirements, but let me show you what I actually mean with this. So let me open up Fusion, plop into here. All right, so this is a finished model, or at least it's got a bunch of stuff going on it. It does have some features. This is a very basic container. Like I said, it doesn't have to be overly detailed. I do expect you to have some features. It's not just like literally like a square that opens. But one of the things that Fusion allows for with its joint tools is you can, whoops, what happened here? Oh, because you have it open. It's fine. So it can open and close. And like I said, the model can be whatever you want that we're importing, and it can be as stupid as you want. And I have a mistletoe in there because it's funny and it makes me laugh. And I am very much a simpleton, or at least I'm easily entertained. And that's what's most important in life. So I'm going to show you how to import models in here. But your main things are you will have multiple components. Main thing, the lid and the bottom here. I'm going to show you how to create, like, actually model a really basic hinge. And in this case, it's like literally just a couple of ears for this. You could make this a multi-part hinge, like quite a few more lobes for this ear design. But I'm going to show you the basic one. You could build it out from there. We are going to be importing hardware using the McMaster-Carr extension. And what I mean for that is under insert, you can go to McMaster-Carr. I'm going to explain this in a few, but this is a website for buying or for fastening and joining parts, mainly meaning just buying screws and nuts and hardware and such like that. Now, I'm not expecting you to buy anything from them. I'm not expecting you to actually print screws and such. I will show you how to print stand-ins for if you still want, like if you want to print this model, only just, you don't want to have to go buy very specific screws. There you go. But this is a way of designing a project with specific hardware in mind, so that if you're building something and, okay, I'm already working metric, I want to make sure all my hardware is metric, and I'm not going to go to Home Depot or other hardware store and buy multiple bags of 2 screws for $5 each. Go somewhere here and buy 50 of them for $10. So great way to build a project, that sort of thing. But I'll show you how to use that in a few. And those will just be stand-ins there. And then lastly, I'm going to show you how to import a model of your choosing. Like I said, the old mistletoe will totally meet under the mistletoe, and it will be a dandy time or whatever. So I show you how to import those models from your choice of file sharing websites. So that's going to be the project. It also has to have some sort of features on top or so. Let me switch modes, color modes. Right now, appearances kind of make it a little bit confusing to see. So Shift N switches to auto color mode. So you want to have some sort of features you could use, like in this case. Definitely need to have some air holes for my little toad missile friend. Or it could just be, danger toad missile inside, or missile toad inside. Whatever. Be text, could be features, whatever. But I want to show you how to either use the cut or the extrude and cut tool, or using the emboss tool to emboss or deboss, which means projected outward or recessed in kind. The other thing is I want to show you how to make like some basic features. I'm not expecting you to make like a functioning latch for this, but rather than this just being a cube that opens, here I have like this little thumb feature that would allow you to at least like pry it open, that sort. Now, one of the things I want you to note on this lid is I do have constraints built into it to where it will only close so far and open so far. Fusion does not treat these solid objects as solid objects. You have to assign elements to, meaning that they will clip through. And clipping means 2 objects just moving past one another because they're not treated as solid barriers. They just kind of move through, like when you're Like when your figure in your video game suddenly sinks into the ground and that's totally not where they're supposed to be. Same deal there. So yeah, make it a little container. It's adorable. All right. So let me get started, or let me switch over and we'll get started. All right. So we're going to make this container, but the whole point of this project, well, one of the points of this project is you're making a container specifically for something. So again, in this case, I made the container for the downloaded missile toad. So we should probably start with what we're going to work from. So let me change screens here. There we go. So you have a variety of immediately available file sharing sites. These are on the assignment page. I'm going to link this onto the video page as well, or on the video notes as well. But the three main ones I point out are like this one, My Mini Factory, which is really for really high-end, high detail, high resolution, little like minifigures, D&D figures, that sort of thing. They have a bunch of other stuff too. Scroll through, more power to you. Most of the files on this site are for pay. So even if it's like $2, you still have to pay for it and such. The two main ones are the two other main ones are things like Thingiverse, thingiverse.com. And of course, they're going to have all kinds of like Halloween stuff going. Lots and lots and lots of different files and such. You can pick whatever you please. A lot of people put on like projects and such, like in this case, a screw-on funnel for filling up or refilling your oil can after doing an oil change in your car, chain oiler, some sort of 3D printed mechanical clock, somewhat gooey, melty pumpkins, and of course the old thinker on the toilet, and Angry Bud. Sure, whatever. Lots and lots of stuff. You can pretty much pick whatever you please. This does not matter. Again, be mindful of obscene stuff, more of just because this is still technically class, but also as long as it's funny, I guess. I don't know. The other option is printables, printables.com. This is the new version, basically, of Thingiverse. You will find many of the same models that you would find on Thingiverse on printables. Ultimately, Thingiverse it's got a really bad search engine, and it kind of lags and crashes quite a lot. So you're going to find a lot of the same stuff on printables, and this is hosted also by Prusa. Not trying to just continually press Prusa stuff. They just kind of branched out into a lot of different things. So same deal. All right, yeah, you got a little enterprise. You got a stackable water bottle holder. You got all kinds of menagerie. A lot of the same stuff. Like I said, you got little tea light pumpkins. Your Easter Island head tissue paper holders. Or tissue holders, sure, why not? Whatever you got. Little tiny ghost kitties, great. Pick whatever you want. This is very much about just finding something and just experimenting with how to download stuff. So, I had one pulled up, a little friendly spooky ghost. This is actually designed to be printed in different parts, in that the body is one object, and the eyes and mouth are little inserts, so that you could say like print this in a glow-in-the-dark filament and the eyes not, or the opposite, whatever. So these three sites specifically, there are plenty more. These are just three major ones off the top of my head. They are safe. They're very safe, as far as you're not going to get like viruses, or it's not like any sneaky thing like that. We are gonna revisit these in a later discussion when it comes to licensing and such like that. But just be aware of these are the sites, and are these some of the major sites. There are many, many, many more, and you are welcome to use whoever you want. And there's no expectation for you to purchase anything. If you want to, that's on you. But I'm gonna start the project with my little friendly ghost friend. So let me pop back over to Fusion. Excuse me. And we will start a new project. Oops. Okay, well, start a new project. First things first, save. Example. Ghost box. I should have found some Ghostbustery instead. Oh well. There we go. So to start this project, like I said, you're going to have multiple components and all that, but first thing, you should probably actually import your file. Now, technically, you would be able to also upload and all that such, but upload is for creating an entirely new file object. You could do that, but in this case, I'm going to show you how to import directly into an existing project. So to do that, you go to Insert, go down to Insert Mesh. And as you see that from the pop-up, exert an existing STL, OBJ, or 3MF file as a mesh body into the active component of a design. Now, a mesh is something that it's the same sort of body. It's just generated rather than from the standard edge splines and such with surface modeling. This is generated through polygon geometry, through point details, and more of triangular designs and such. There are ways to convert objects back and forth to mesh as well as modifying, but usually a mesh body is kind of locked in as a non-modifiable body. But we'll get into stuff like that for later. But for now, this is how we're going to do this, simply because you can actively bring an existing model into your project without having to start a brand new one or anything like that. So go to there, insert mesh. Obviously, in this case, it's downloaded onto the computer's local drive. Select for computer, and I'm going to my download here. And currently, this is reading as a Prusa slicer file. It is an STL file. It's only reading that because I set the slicer program as a default reader for all of that stuff. So open it, and boop, just drops it in. Now, you have your standard modifiers here, as in you could pan, move it around, orbit it in different positions. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as is. Works there. Remember, I could always change the scale of it later. So I'm going to hit OK. Where'd you go, friend? Did I hit OK or did I hit cancel? I think I accidentally hit cancel. All right, let me do that again. Post body, mesh. Yeah, right there. Okay. I must have hit cancel. Okay. So in bodies, there's my ghost body. Oh, okay, awesome. It automatically starts with a problem. Does not create a positive. Oh, okay. So one of the things you'll find is sometimes with files on some of those websites, they are created through more simple CAD software, things like SketchUp and I think it's like Google Sketch, stuff like that. Very, very basic programs that sometimes through generating a finished mesh, or at least through the mesh translation within Fusion, sometimes some of the geometry gets corrupted or lost. And in this case, it's sometimes easy to see, and I'm not seeing it. So at least there is a repair tool here. So it automatically popped up. Let's have a look. We can check the checkbox for preview. See if anything pops up. I am not seeing any problems. I don't know. Okay, fine. So mesh is close oriented. So what was the problem? It said there's a problem, but it's now saying no problem. So cool. I don't know. Maybe it already repaired. So you have options here: close hole, stitch and remove. Stitching is literally like with it's the digital version of you got a hole in your clothes, you got to bring some points together and close the hole. It's a virtual version of that. So I'll just check the checkbox for preview, stitch and remove, hit OK. It's going to think about it, and then it keeps doing that, keeps jumping the program. Okay, no more error, so cool. All right. Now, for this, you could leave it here where it is, but for the sake of the assignment, I'm going to plop my little ghost friend into its own component. Now, you can do that in two ways. You can go to over assemble, create new component, select there, start it, new component. All right, ghost buddy. Click OK. Now I've created a new component. It is active, and then I can just drag and drop that object into that object or into that component, and now it's in there. The other option would have been I just select it already, hit new component, hit OK, and it creates the component automatically. Now I just created a component, a nested component, so a component within a component. That gets confusing, so I'm just going to Control Z. So you have either option. Either create the component with the body already selected, or create the component and then drag and drop the body from the project tree onto the correct component. Like I said, doing this is merely for the sake of this assignment. There's no harm in leaving this model body just in general where it was, but this is merely for the sake of this assignment. Okay. So we're gonna create a box container specifically for this. So I need to know how big this little guy is. So I'm going to use the measure tool. Over inspect, the default tool, measure, it measures. You can select points, lines, edges, things like that. In this case, one of the issues, this turned into a pretty complex mesh. So I'm going to select somewhere, just try to find a point at the top. It's not going to give me a precise exact because there's quite a few very close together points up top. Same thing for the bottom. Just going to pick a couple. All right. So that is 53 millimeters. Okay. That's not bad. Realistically, again, we have rulers if you need that reference point, but that ends up being just about a little over 2 inches tall. So that's not bad. You can make it bigger if you want, but in this case, yeah, that's a good size. We'll make like a little pocket container for the ghost friend. Okay, cool. That'll work. If you needed to change that, you could, of course, go to there. Excuse me. We could, of course, scale it up, which is under modify scale, or if you can't find it, remember, you can press the, nope, not fillet. I suddenly forgot. There we go. S Sierra for your design shortcuts. If you can't find a tool, either you have the ones that you already default and plopped in here, or in this case, I could just type in scale, and it's going to find my tool. Now I have scale, which is regular scale, and scale mesh. You could use either one. Mesh is referring to up at the top of the toolbar here. Remember, you have different modes, different workspaces, so you're not overwhelmed with tools. There are solids, there are surfaces, there are meshes, that sort. We might be able to get into some of this stuff later in the semester, but for now, we're just using solid. The scale, regular scale, and the scale mesh, they work exactly the same. They are just called two different things because they exist also on other workspaces. So don't worry about that. So if you need to scale it up, do so. Hit S, scale. Oh, it helps if you can spell. Scale tool, select the little friend here. Remember, this is by factors, so multiples, not by actual dimension. You could also do non-uniform scale if you want. You want to stretch it all out, kind of taffy style. There you go. But uniform would work. If I wanted to make this 100 millimeters tall, since it's already like 53, yeah, I'd do about ×2. So it's going to be twice as big. But if I was going to print this, that might be a bit large. So maybe instead of 2, I'd do like 1.5. I don't know. Happy medium, whatever. Okay. We've established how to bring something in the project. Okay. So orient how you want this to be. If you want this to open top and bottom, great. If you want to open this side to side like a steamer case, cool. I think I might do that just because it's a little different. All right. So what I'm going to do first is, realistically, if it helps, I would like to center this guy, but that's going to be kind of problematic because I should have brought it in a different way. I can use the move tool. Oh, geez, we're just going to kind of pick something somewhere-ish. And I can at least try to move this center-wise. But honestly, the other option would just be kind of try to plop it right on top. The only reason this is going to be a problem if it's not centered is if we're generating objects based off the origin point or major axes. It kind of gets thrown off. But the other thing would be, yeah, just make the container a little bit larger and it'll fit. Okay. So I'm just going to move it to that point, so at least it's kind of flat. It's more or less flat against that major axis. So yeah, that'll work. Okay, cool. We got it. Well, let's start up. First off, I'm going to start a sketch. I'm on the front, so I'm working directly on the XZ plane. select that origin plane, and like I did for the Revolve project, I'm just going to draw a sketch around this to give myself an actual like reference box to start from. So, excuse me. Like I said, if you were working from the center, it'd be a lot easier to start from a center point triangle somewhere directly on the axis and draw outward from there to at least give yourself a good reference. Actually, that's not bad. That kind of worked right about roughly in the center. So, all right. Kind of pick there. And if I decide, oh, you know what, that actually needs to be bigger or smaller, remember, you can go to use the dimension tool, sketch dimension, click on one of the dimensions, and it brings up an actual numeric value on that one. You know what? Just for the sake of making it a full number, I'm going to turn that into 100. Okay. Do the same for this side. Draw out my dimension. In this case, let's make it 85. Okay. No real change. It's just more of showing you how to make those dimensional references and such. Hit escape to close out of that tool, and yeah, that could work. I think that'll work for me for now, because I'm just going to be like extruding a form out for now. That splits the object right down the middle. You don't have to make this like 50-50 clamshell style. This could be like a mostly container with just like a little lid. That's fine. The division of where your hinge and such is going to end up does not matter. This is much more about however you feel like working. Okay, so let's finish sketch. All right, cool. So in this case, that pretty much does it. So from here, oh crud. All right, well, I made a mistake. I wanted to have had that sketch not nested inside the ghost component. I wanted it outside. So let's see if I can drag and drop that. I might not be able to because there's no sketches outside yet. All right. So in this case, what I'm going to actually have to do is I'm going to have to activate the entire project and start a sketch. Irritating, I know, but there we are. Okay. So I started that sketch, finished sketch, because what I'm going to do is I just needed to generate a spot. Now, if I wanted, I could either drag and drop this upwards. No, won't let me. All right. So the other option would be go into the previous sketch, select everything. Oops, just in case it's not selecting the logos, friend. Copy, Control C or Command C, finish sketch, go up to the one I just created, edit sketch, paste, plop, there we go. Okay, so that's there now. I could just go ahead and delete this one. I want to get rid of that. Just there's no need to have multiples. The reason I'm doing this is I want to have a sketch outside of either component or any component, just in the main project component, because I'm going to use that same one to make both the lid and the base. All right. So now, speaking of, let's go ahead and create those components just to help keep things organized. Create new component. Now, an easy way to get out of accidentally doing what I just did, deselect the checkpoint that says activate new component. So when I create this new component, it doesn't automatically activate that. It leaves the activation at the top of the full project, leaves everything active. Okay, so we'll just do label 1 as lid, do it again, and just say base. Cool. All right. So now I have multiple components, one for the lid, one for the base. All right. Now is where I'd want to go ahead and extrude and do some stuff. So I'm going to unhide the ghost buddy. Ghost buddy body. Just so I can see what I'm doing. Okay. I'm going to activate, say, the base. All right. Now, the rest of it kind of, I usually say ghosted out. There we go. Because I can use that sketch that is outside of either of those components to create an extruded body within the current component. So you don't have to have the sketch that you're using in the same component. That can get confusing, but it can also help you keep things organized. So in this case, I'm just going to use extrude. I'm going to select that sketch, and in this case, I'm going to just draw backwards. We'll make it even, so let's say 50 instead of 51. Remember, you have some modifiers here you can play with. In this case, The rotation here is a taper. You can actually taper this if you want. So you could automatically make it like a trapezoid or something. This is really handy if you are making something that is going to become like a mold or something that has just a little bit of a taper into it. It's up to you, just playing around. But in this case, I guess I'm just going to leave it at 0. Excuse me. Yeah, that works. New body. There we go. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do with both of these, I'm going to show you some different ways you can create the hollow space inside. So in this one, we're going to leave this as just a box. Now for the lid, I'm going to activate this one, do the same, extrude, just to make sure I'm selecting that sketch. There you go, mouse over, same. Now I'm going to go this way, 50 millimeters. Yeah, that works pretty well. It's not too small, not too large. Probably shrink it a little bit. Let's say for this one, let's see what 40 does. Whoops, I didn't mean to hit OK. Now, of course, the problem is a matter of opacity. You can't see it as clearly. Now you can play with, if you need to change the display settings, something like object visibility. Oh, no, visual style. There we go. Let's say shaded with hidden edges. Now I can see the ghost inside. Yeah, you know what? That is a little close. Let's say, like, you know what? We'll just leave it at 50-50. Hey. Okay, there we go. Okay. So just so you can see what I'm doing here, I have created basically just 2 boxes that end up making a cube around the ghost. Okay, cool. That's pretty simple. Now in this case, I'll show you all some different ways. I could make this like a barrel or something like that. Doesn't matter. In this case, just making a very basic cube. We'll play with it more in a moment. All right. So I want to make that hollow, because right now, if I hide either of these, that's just a solid chunk that it is currently just clipping between. So let's hide the ghost and we'll work on the lid. So I got a couple of options on how I could hollow this out. I could use the extrude or I can use the shell tool. First, let me show you extrude, which in this case would be, let's create a new sketch on the inside edge of that component. But hang on, starting to do that, I want to make sure that I'm working on just the lid now, just focusing on the lid. So I activated the lid component, new sketch, backside, there we go. In this case, I want to use the outer edge here. So let's see if it'll let me use offset. Yep, it will. So in most cases, I found like 3 millimeter wall thickness works pretty well. So let's say 3, but it has to be -3 because it's going inward from that edge profile. -3. Okay, that works. So that's just basing that right there. Now what I could do is I could just say finish, extrude, select that sketch, and drag it inward, and you see it automatically just starts to cut away. Now, this would be one of those times where you could enter this numerically. I'm going to use one of the modifiers, the extent type, because what if I change the dimension of that box and such? Then I'll have to go back through, change the extrude, yada, yada, yada. Gets problematic. Instead, I'm going to select to object, and I'm going to select the backside. Now, if I just select that, it's going to cut all the way through. However, you can add an offset here. The original thing, 3 millimeter wall. All right. I create an offset of 3 millimeters, -3 millimeters. So it stays inside. Now that extrude will only go, no matter what I do to the overall dimension, it will only go to within 3 millimeters of that that facing wall. Hit OK. There you go. Hollow box. Pretty simple. The other option, and let me back up real quick before this so I could just make a copy of this. So let's just copy paste, make a second one. There we go. All right. So this will be an extrude lid, just so you can see what I'm doing here. And make a second one. This will be shell lid. Okay, so I just created a copy before I made this extrusion. Makes it more convenient to work. So let me switch over to the shell lid. I'm going to use the shell tool in this case. This is over modify, shell. What this does is it removes material away from the interior, dependent on a wall thickness. So it's like a three-dimensional offset tool. I use the offset tool to create that sketch rather than tracing or making or remeasuring and making a new dimensional sketch based around the outside of that. I just use the offset tool and just shrink the outside edge a little bit. This one, I can do both that sketch and the extrude and the two object and offset with the shell tool. So let me select shell. It bases the start of the shell, the hollowing out, on the face you select. So if I start with the same face, it's going to start the extrude or start the shell process from there. Now you can use the slider and it will create a hollow space with equal distant wall thickness. So in this case, I want 3 millimeter wall thickness all around. Bam, there we go. Easy peasy. But cool thing about using the shell tool versus the extrude tool in this case, let me step back before the shell tool. And in this case, I want to make some fillets. I want to change both the inside and outside have fillets. The shell tool is an offset for the whole thing. So if I use fillet on all the outside edges, and we'll do the whole face here too. So let's just do like a 1 millimeter, more than that, 5. Okay, there we go. Pretty good curvature there. I did not touch this side. Select OK. Now when I perform the shell tool, it will take that fillet into account. Let me change the display settings because it's a little bit hard to see. Just go back to shaded. Nope, I should do with shaded with visible edges. There we go. Now it also took into account that offset and made the inside of the box also filleted. So again, let the program do the work for you. Cool. Well, that's a painfully basic way to make the lid, but that works. Okay, so let's save lid. Cool. All right, so let me collapse the lid here and unhide the base. Let's activate the base component. Ew. All right, now one thing here is, yeah, I'm definitely going to want to add the fillet there so they match. You don't have to, but might as well. So let's go ahead and add that fillet there around those corners. And I'll do the whole, oh, not that one. Do the whole backside there. Make sure I got all 4. There we go. That was a 3 millimeter fillet. Oops. Or did I do more than 3? Needed 5. Helps to remember what you were just doing. Okay, there we go. 5. Fillet. Okay, great. But what I want to do for this side, I want to show you a different option, or another option is, what if I want my little ghost friend to not rattle around in there? What if I want it to actually stay put? So I'm going to see if this works with this being a mesh. I'm not sure if this will work properly, but let me hide the lid, just make things easier for myself. Remember how we have options for the combine tool, like operation, join, cut, and all that such, and intersect? Not what we want this case, but I'm going to try using the cut tool to remove a chunk from this base object in the same shape as my ghost. So select cut, my target body, the body that will have an effect on the base. My tool body, poop, see, it won't let me do this. Okay, I was afraid of this, but there we are. If you had something more simple, so in this case, you know what? Let me see. Before we move on, let me see if this will let me convert this mesh back into a solid body. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because Fusion doesn't really have a very strong mesh editor options. You can create meshes, but yeah. So this I don't expect you to do, but I just want to show you as an example. I switched over to the mesh workspace. Let's see here. I'm trying to remember. I don't do this very often, so I'm trying to remember how to convert. There we go. So under modify, convert mesh, takes that mesh and tries to convert it back to a solid body. What we've been working with, those are solid bodies. You see all the significantly more detailed geometry? That is a mesh. So let me see if this will work. Go to modify, convert mesh, select that mesh. Operation, yeah, sure, parametric, whatever. Method, whatever. Let's try it. See if I crash the program, freeze everything. We'll see. Definitely a tool to use on a more powerful computer. Nothing's happening. Awesome. Sorry, give me a second. All right, actually, I don't know how long this might take. I'm going to pause the recording for a moment. Okay, cool, it worked. You can tell that it worked. Well, one, the computer didn't completely freeze or explode or burst into flames or anything like that, or just boot us out of the program. But expanding the project tree here, looking at my object source, because right now it looks the same. It physically looks no different right now. But looking at the icon here, the symbol for a solid, just a little white cylinder versus that mesh icon like you're seeing here, that has now converted it to a solid. Now, not sure how much I can manipulate that, but we're not going to deal with that right now. But I now should be able to use that solid to remove a section from this block. All right, cool. I'm going to save. Apparently, I think the file just got significantly larger because saving it usually pretty instant. All right, there we go. All right, let's try this. Go to combine, target body is the lid or the base here. I want to use cut instead, selecting the ghost. Ooh, yeah, that's taking a good chunk. While I'm thinking about that, the one thing you want to make sure to select is the keep tools checkbox. Because if I'm using the ghost as my cutting tool, it will delete the whole body of that now converted mesh, that's solid. I don't want that to happen. I want to keep the tool. I just want to create a recess. Think it again. All right, let me pause it again. Okay, it finally finished processing. Maybe this isn't the best option. Make sure to select the keep tools checkbox. Otherwise, it'll delete the whole mesh we just, or the solid we just created. Hopefully it doesn't. Yeah, see, I should have started with the keep tool. Let's do it again. Yeah, that's about right. I hit OK and see if it just crashes entirely. Let me pause the recording again. Okay, so I had to force quit that. Definitely gave this computer much too much to think about. So a different way of working around that, if I still want a dedicated recess, what I could do is I can kind of do a combination here. I was successful in translating my little ghost friend from a mesh to a solid, but kind of caused some problems here. So going to start a new sketch on this surface here on the top, but I am going to use the little ghost as a projection. I'm going to try to. Let's see if this will let me. So I'm going to go to create, project, because remember, a project just takes an outline, but you can take an outline of a curved surface. So I'm going to, let's see if it'll even let me. There we go. Of the body here. Come on. Come on, buddy. Really? All right. I don't think this is going to work for me. This computer is just it's just not handling the complexity of this mesh. I didn't think it would be this powerful. or it wouldn't be powerful enough. Jeez. Yeah, it's just because of how dense the geometry of this ghost is. I could have dialed back the complexity when I originally imported it in and just made it a more simplified form. But yeah, well, you learn some stuff while you're working on. All right, let me pause this again and hopefully it'll unfreeze. Okay, well, apparently anything I'm trying to do right now with the complexity of that mesh is just throwing the program at for a loop. So, oh well, I'm just going to ignore what I'm trying to do for now, and I'm just going to go ahead and shell this just to move forward. So let me close that, and let me hide the little ghost, and I'll use the shell tool again for inside. We'll do a 3mm. There we go. Okay, fine. We've got a lid, we've got a base. It's painfully basic, but there we are. Okay. So main things, we're talking about adding features and stuff like that. We're also talking about adding, the hinges and such. So the features we can add whenever. Let's go ahead and start with what we want to use for a lid and such. So what you need for a basic container, let me open the previous project back up. You just need a couple of basic ears, and these are just the ear lobes. Geez, you could have multiples. It's a basic barrel hinge. Like if you look at look at your door, you walk in and out of a room or something. Those are called barrel hinges, or actually, I think those are pins. Anyway, but you have any number of interlocking lobes with a center pin going through the center of them. And what we're doing here is we're just creating these from a single shared sketch and then activating one component or the other when we create the actual lobes. So let me switch back to here. And in this case, I'm going to actually make this more of like a steamer trunk style where it opens left and right instead of top and bottom, just to be different. So in this case, I'm going to make sure the entire project is active. I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to create a sketch. And I'm going to create that on the XY plane. Now, realistically, this would have been much more helpful to have created this right in the middle. But where we are, that might actually cause some problems. So I'll tell you what, let's escape, finish sketch. I'm just going to delete that last one. Because what I want to do is it's easiest to be able to build this from the midway point. So this is why I was saying that this makes everything a lot easier if you actually center your design on the origin point. It's not impossible if you don't. It's just a little more simple. So what I can do is instead I can create a construction plane. I can create a construction plane from the top, from any surface or whatever, as well as from an origin plane. But to double check, let's remind ourselves, how tall is this box? Pick any two surfaces, 85mm, of course. So that's 42.5. Yeah, 42.5 is half. Sometimes you do actually have to do math in your head. So I'm going to make a construction plane, basing it off of one of the surfaces here, and I'm going to move it down negative 42.5. That'll be the halfway point of my container. Great. So that just creates a starting plane, just like if I was working off of the XY plane or any of those, off the origins, same deal. All right. So now I have the whole project active. Create a sketch on my construction plane. All right. So I'm looking straight down, and what I want to do is I want to create a hinge right off the center point where these two halves meet. Now, an easy thing to do is use the project tool. You use project, go down, or you can just press P, and I'm just going to borrow. Sorry. Didn't mean to get into that. These two edge lines here. Now, honestly, I didn't really need it because this isn't a curved surface, just a curved corner. But just to show you how you could borrow those two lines if you were building this on, say, like even a sphere or something. And this is what I was trying to show you how to do basically with that ghost, but it was too complex and it was overloading the program. So I'm just going to use the project tool here, hit OK. And what I can do is I can hide the top and bottom lid, and it leaves me with these two purple lines. These are just duplicates of that edge. If this were a complex model, it would still take the outermost points of that curve and project it here. So from here, I'm going to create a couple circles directly off of here. To do that, I can use a center point circle right off, or instead, tell you what, let's start with a line right there, just drawing straight out some degree. I don't know, sure, 30, doesn't matter in this case, because I'm going to create that line as a construction line just to give myself a point of reference. That's the divide line. Okay. So a basic hinge is just a couple of circles. So I'm going to create a circle, but I'm going to use a 2-point circle. So I'm going to start right there at that shared edge and just draw outward. 15 is enormous. What you want to do is decide how large you think you want a screw to use. In this case, I'm probably going to use a common size, like a 3 or a 5 millimeter screw. So yeah, if I want it to be 5 millimeters, using a 5 millimeter screw, it's kind of beefy, but that's all right. This barrel needs to be larger. I didn't mean to leave that at construction, so let's just say 10. Okay. Turn that back from a construction line. I didn't mean for that. There we go. So now I can create a center point circle right there, 5 millimeters. Great. From here, I wanted to create that lobes. That is just drawing, maybe like in this case, a line somewhere out there-ish. I can really do anything I want here. Now that's snapping to that axis line. That's okay. Maybe instead I'll do like a 60-degree line, and I'll just have it cross. That's okay. But I do want to make sure this line, not that it's a necessity, but just for my own entertainment's sake, I want to have that line as a tangent off the circle. So select the tangent tool, select the line, select the circle to tangent from. There we go. Just snaps to there. This is still a 60-degree angle, and I can just trim that chunk off. There we go. Now I'm going to use the mirror tool to copy that line. My mirror line is that construction line I used before. Now there's one down there. Okay, that could be it. That could absolutely be all we need to use. If you want to add more, something more complex, something more ornate, more power to you. I'm going to finish sketch. All right, let me unhide the lid and such. Okay, now the reason I created that sketch outside of either of these, it's on the main project, is now as I tumble around or orbit around, it's not isolated into either of those. But I'm going to use the extrude tool while activating one or the other object. So let's start with the base. Sure. Select there. Now, because that sketch is still accessible because it's outside that base, I'm going to hit extrude. I'm going to select the barrel and then half of that hinge, one of those sides. There we go. As I start to extrude this, it turns green because it is connecting, and look at operation join, it is automatically joining to that component. I don't have to take any other steps. It's automatically part of that. But I do want that symmetrical. I do want it to go both ways. So go to direction, symmetric, and we'll just say whole length instead of by distance. So in this case, we'll make it a 20 millimeter extrusion, and operation is automatically join. Hit OK. Bam. There is instantly one of the lobes. That's it. Really simple way to work. Now, do you need to make it that large of a tab? No. This is just a really easy way to work. Doesn't have to be a tangent, doesn't have to be any specific angle. This could have been a straight line right over. This could have been a curved line. Doesn't matter. These don't have to match either. Only that central cylinder needs to match. So if you make the other ones differenty, that's okay if you want. But for the sake of this project, you're going to keep it the same. Now I'm going to activate the lid component. Now this takes on a little bit of differenty thing here. So again, that sketch for this hinge, and I can even, if I really need to, label this, which I probably should do, just to help me out. Now I have activated the lid component. I'm going to do another extrude. Extrude. Now, sometimes it's hard to find that sketch within this. If you can't find it, just hide that base project. Make sure the sketch is actually visible. I select the barrel, but this time I select the other tab. Now, trick is if I directly start to extrude, yes, it's going to automatically assume I want to join these parts, but if I unhide this, this is taking up the same space. I can't have that start at the sketch plane. So you have other options. On your toolbar where it says start, instead of at profile plane, you could use offset if you want to just start off in space, or use an object as reference, just like when we used the extrude to distance to object. Same here. So object, and instead of the start plane being start point being the origin plane, I'm going to select the top of that surface. Now it snaps right up and starts right there. I don't know, 10, 15. This part doesn't really matter. I'm just going to throw numbers out. Okay, join. Now it's only going to join to this top because that is what is active. Despite you being able to visibly see the bottom, this is the component that is active. So this is why we're also using components versus different bodies. There we go. Now I can't create both lobes at the same time. I have to hit OK and repeat this process for the other one. But there we go. Right click and I can just repeat extrude. Same, select that same sketch right there. Start, object, orbit down and select the bottom side. Now dragging downward, and I have to go -15 this time. Now I have my other lobe. Activate the whole project. Very, very simple hinge. All right, save. Hinge modeled. Okay. Oh, it's saving a while because that ghost is in there, and it's really this. I imagine this file is significantly larger than it usually would be. Okay, so we're good there. Great. Now, two other major parts is we need to create a hinge, or we need to create this hinge to work with a joint, and then import some hardware. We don't have to have the hardware to make it work, so let's just create the joint first. All right. Joint is under assemble, or it's one of the default tools up here. Drop down, you have duplicate joints, you have as-built joints. There's different ones. We're just going with the regular joint tool. Now, note the first thing it says. Joint positions components relative to each other in an assembly and defines relative motion, yada, yada. Components. This is the other reason why we have to create these separate object bodies in their own components. Because if you don't, the joint tool will not function properly. You cannot create a joint between two objects shared in the same component. Now, you could nest one component and then move another component within that component. That's how you can create complex assemblies. Like, say you're trying to create an arm, like a robot arm with a robot hand or something. I guess you wouldn't want to make a robot arm with a human hand. That'd be unsettling. You could create the whole arm, one component. All right. Then the arm sections are nested components, and then the hand is a component further down in that. You could make it more complex, but in this case, we're just leaving them all surface level components. Doesn't matter in this case. So, okay. Select joint. Toolbar comes up. You have two tabs: a position, excuse me, and motion. Position selects what you're basing the movement to activate around. The motion is what kind of motion it will be. You have a variety. We're going to get into that in a moment. Let's use position first. All right. So the joint tool will also move things into positions. The thing you select first is what will move. this thing you select second is to where it will move to. That also means that if you're just moving it around the selected position or current positions, first selection is what will move. Second selection is what you're basing that movement on. Now, in this case, we're going to have these two components. That's fine. So which one is the lid? Which one is the base? Well, we didn't add any tabs or anything yet. It's still just a very basic box. But the yellow one is my lid. The green one is my base. All right. So the lid is what's going to move. The green one is going to stay put. All right. So what I actually want, and you can see as my selection thing mouses around, I've got a new kind of selection icon. I've got this circle within a circle and these three lines coming off. Those are my relative axes. Your red, green, and blue, X, Y, and Z, respectively. As I mouse around, you can see on a surface, I have the surface, but I also have snap points. They got the corners, triangle is for the center, and then the square is the center of the entire surface. Well, I'm working around this cylinder here, and I actually want this point to be down floating inside of here. So cool thing is their selection function has gotten significantly better. Because right now I keep mousing around, all right, yada, yada, yada. One thing you note here is as I mouse over the surface, look in the center of that hollow cylinder, there's a little plus sign there. That lets me snap to the top of that cylinder. You can see it highlights the whole cylinder. I need it further down. So it can kind of get hard to see. That is probably selecting exactly what I need. But if you're having trouble seeing stuff, hide what you don't need. Okay. That's fine. Oh, wait, no. See, I almost mixed up. Remember, I need to select the lid first because that's what will move. So I actually need to hide the base. And my first selection here is going to be floating in space here. It's not right there. It's not right there. It's actually smack between here. Now, technically, I could use those faces and it would work just fine. But for the sake of completeness, let's use what it needs to be. So your selection modes have different modes. The default one is simple. Man, there you go. It's right on a surface, floating on a surface, something like that. The next selection is between two faces. This actually, it just works the same way. It's just you can create that hinge point, that joint point, floating in space. So select there. The edge one we're not going to worry about. So what you select is two planes. One of these and one of those. So select the one, select the two, but now I do need that joint, that hinge point to be in the center of that circle. Look how it has created a construction plane smack between those two planes. Really cool. Now I can select over the cylinder. Now it knows I need it in the center there, so I can select over that cylinder, selecting right in the center, and my selection point is right there floating in space between the two halves. Really, it's slightly more complex, but they make it pretty easy. They guide you along. All right, now I need to select my second point. So let me unhide the base. I don't have to hide the lid, but if it helps, it helps. I can select the exact same spot because I'm basing this all around the exact same spot. If you have trouble, hide the lid. You're going down into the cylinder, not there at the top, mousing down, exact same spot. Unhide and you'll see. Okay. Now you can move this around. We don't need to. Now, your next selection option, and this is simply if things get misaligned or anything, you can move stuff around that sort. Like if I was moved, you can use this to move things into position. We don't need to worry about that. I'll show you in the next part. Motion is what we need to select next. Now, right now, this is a rigid joint. Press animate, and it just shakes and gives you anxiety. Rigid joint is like if you just glued two parts together. So if I was creating an object, I wanted to link things together through a joint, because if you complete the object with joints, there's a way in Fusion you can create exploded diagrams, and it will assume that now that those are 2 points, but they're meant to be glued together, it'll blow them apart. Whatever. Rigid joint means it locks together in some regard. Use the drop down. Revolute is actually the one we're going to want. Like I said, it will clip through. It doesn't already assume those are solid objects. But double check that it's around the correct axis. It's not like accidentally doing something that absolutely could not be doing. We have some other versions. We're going to use these later on, but you have like slider, which it slides along that axis. Cylindrical is it slides and rotates. We're going to use that on the next project. Pin slot is for creating like sliders within a line. Planer slides around that plane, only it's got multiple axes going right now. And there's even a ball socket, so it'll orbit in 360 all around, and it just gets everything weird. We're using Revolute. Let's keep it simple. Around the Z-axis here. Now, you can limit the joints right now, but I'm going to do it in a second. Just want to show you how this works. Okay, great. So let's save. Joint created. And again, it's taking longer to save because I've got that, that mesh in there. Okay. So now you'll see, because this is also created with the whole project active, I've got a new dropdown, joints, Revolute. I can open this up, preview limits. Now I haven't set any limits yet. So let's do that. I can set this by minimum and maximum, or if you zoom in, you can actually see there's these little flags. You can just you can drag this into position too. Sometimes it's hard to grab though. So let's activate these. I want that to go open, let's say 100 degrees. Now, when I hit preview limits, snaps back and forth. There we go. If it's going the wrong way, there is a flip tool. So obviously that's not at all what I want, but just letting you know that it does that. Okay. Save. Joint limits. Now, one of the things you need to be able to do is, you saw on this first one, I could just drag and move the lid. Might have to delete that ghost out of there. It's taking forever. I can drag and move that lid just by clicking and dragging. And I'll show you what these two things mean in a moment. But you have to do that. You have to lock one of the halves in place, because if I grab this, it moves the whole freaking thing around. They're locked together, but it moves everything. Now, the two things that just popped up here, revert or capture position. If you're moving something in a position, you want it to stay in that position now, you hit capture position, revert, brings it back to where it was. It's Control Z's it, or Command Z's. All right. What you have to do is ground one of the objects. To do that, I'm going to select the base. That's the one that's not moving at all. All you have to do, right-click on the component. The first one that pops up here, or second rather, sorry, ground. Select that. You see this little pin icon appear. Also on my timeline, little push pin thing icon has appeared. That bottom has now been locked into those virtual coordinates. It cannot move unless I deactivate that ground, which just means ungrounded. Now, when I click and drag the lid, stays in place. There we go. And bring in the old little friend there. Peekaboo. Sorry, I couldn't stop myself. It's just a little present for me. I'm getting very tired. All right. So that's pretty much those parts. Yeah. Last part I'll show you tonight is how to import some hardware. Now, you can select whatever you want, but just to show you how this functions, zoom back out. Go to Insert, and instead of Mesh, there's the Insert McMaster-Carr component. Now, this is the exact same thing. This little window is exactly the same as if you went to their website and you wanted to actually order this stuff. So what we need, we're going to need screws or threaded rods and some nuts. In this case, I made the hole 5 millimeters wide, and what to do, 15, 15, 20, so 50 millimeters long. So I'll need something that's probably like a threaded rod that's like 60 millimeters long, and some nuts to go on the either end. So let's go to select threaded rods. I'm using a metric dimension, and makes it easier. It's a 5mm hole, so M5. Length, crud, goes from 50mm to 80. Well, I'm gonna have to trim some of that down, or I can always shrink the earlobes a little bit. I'll have to show you how to shrink those. Let's see if there's options in between. There are not. Crud. That's all right. I'll show you how to trim stuff down. All right. So I need an 80mm threaded rod. I can select fully threaded or threaded on either end. Doesn't really matter. We'll use fully threaded. What you can do is you cycle down and pick something, whatever. You've got a bunch of all kinds of selection stuffs here. Ultimately, like, oh, you know what? Let's do a steel one. That's cool. Whatever. Doesn't matter on these, because what you're wanting to do is just find the product number. It's hard to see sometimes, but it's highlighted. Brings a drop down, and you see product detail here, an option. You can immediately import a fully modeled bit of hardware rather than making them yourself. Just bring it in. Now, you do have to make a selection of what type of file it is. It is a step file. Now, you have two options, step or step with no threads. You can select either. We're going to go with step. Just think of it. The next step is step file. Little thing. And then hit download. And it will import the modeled threaded rod right after it thinks about it for a moment. Crashed it again, didn't I? There we are. Okay. So you can drag this out and just move. You do not have to move this into position at all. You can leave it right where it is or bring it out. Okay. Now, like I said about capture position, you can do that in the toolbar, or there's a checkbox at the very bottom, capture position right where it is. Yep, I'm going to leave it right there. Cool. Now, I technically would need to trim this down, but for the model's sake, we'll deal with it later. I also want some sort of end cap, excuse me, end cap nuts. So go back into McMaster-Carr, go to nuts, metric. They're M5 also, makes it easy. Let's go with acorn nuts, cap nuts. Those are always neat. And sure, stainless steel, doesn't matter. Same thing, select the product number. I'm not going to packs. And like I said, this is what if you're going to Home Depot, you need like 3 of them, there's going to be like $10. Here's 25 of them for less than $5. It's a good place to buy stuff from. Same thing, it will save your previous selection, at least within the same project. I can't remember if it will, if you like finish, close out, and open Fusion again. I can't remember if it'll also save your selection, but just remember, it's step. The next step is the step file. There you go. Download, plops one in there. Drag one in. I do need 2 of these, but I'm going to leave one, capture position. Hit OK. And you see it's creating these new components here. I need a second one of these. Copy and paste. Now, I am going to rotate this one 90 degrees, or 180 rather, sorry. Oops, I didn't mean to plop that there. And let's move that just so it's kind of at least a slightly less awkward spot. Just up into space, cool. Capture position as well, fine. Okay, so you got these little parts floating in space. You can use the joint tool to maneuver them exactly where you want them. So this is why I say it doesn't matter where you plop them. Use the joint tool. Makes it so much easier. I'm going to go to simple joint. I'm going to start by selecting the center of this threaded rod. Now, the threaded rod is a little awkward to work with because the threads are modeled and it gets hard to select the center. But I just showed you how to find the center of something like this. We're going to use between 2 faces. Select the top one there, warp it down, top one there, or the bottom one rather, sorry. And the snap point is somewhere in the middle. So if I zoom in and I select the center, there we go. See, now my center point is floating smack in the middle of that threaded rod between the end caps. Cool. Where do I want it to go? Right there. Simple snap, whoop, floats it in position. Now, the motion it's saving as revolute, I'm just going to leave that as a rigid because it's locking in place. Hit OK. That's it. That's all you have to do to position stuff. So the joint tool makes it really easy to move stuff like that in position. I can use the same for the acorn caps. Problem is I do want to shrink this threaded rod down a little bit. That's definitely too long. I want to use a split body command on that. So I'm going to undo that. But for now, I'll show you how to just plop the end caps on. Next class, I'll show you how to trim this stuff and add the other features and everything. So just to move these into position, select joint. Now again, what you select first will move. What you select second is to where it will move to. Now I want it to lock on to the end of this threaded rod, but to do that, I need to mouse up inside and I need to select the inside face floating up in there. See how it's selecting up in top, not the surface here. I want it all the way up in there. Make sure you're actually selecting the top. There we go. And again, rigid joint works just fine. Oops, I lost where I am. Zoom in, smack at the top. Boop. It flies in place. Hit OK. Do the same thing for the bottom. Joint. Zooming in from the top, select there. Face of the threaded screw. Flies in. I do like that they animate that. And there you go. Now, yes, that threaded rod is much too long. I'm going to use something else to, I'm going to show you next class how to trim that down. You could have also used a screw that was long enough. You do not have to add like threaded end caps for each one or anything like that. You could just use like a screw or a pin or something like that. I'll also show you next class how to model just a stand-in pin that you could 3D print if you want to. I'll also show you how you could actually make use of a length of filament itself to use as your pin by shrinking the diameter of these holes. So went over a lot, or we tried to go over more, but hey, yeah, these things happen. The screws are in place with rigid joints. The lid opens up. Yeah, I'm going to say it again with a little peekaboo action. Again, look, I'm tired. I got to have my own fun here. You do what you need to do. But that'll do it for now. So let's save there. And we'll, let's see here. Okay, there we are. So next class, I'll show you how to add features as well as shrink that threaded rod to size and a few other features as well. We'll also do troubleshooting. So pick a model. Maybe don't convert it to a solid and just completely bog down your software. Or when you do import it, maybe try to dial back the complexity. But you're welcome to bring in whatever you want. You can make this a functional thing if you fully intend to have this as like, yeah, I actually found an object of like, I want to be able to keep like, I don't know, I'm just looking at things on my desk, keys or Tic Tacs, or yeah, there's a tiny bottle, there's a teeny tiny thing of Tic Tacs that holds like 5 Tic Tacs in there. I don't know. Whatever. But has to have 2 components for the lid and the base. Those don't have to be the same. They are in this case. Has to have some sort of hinge. Doesn't matter the number of lobes. You could have this as a 20 lobe hinge. I would recommend keeping it 3 or 5. Odd numbers makes it easier. And I'll show you how to do the rest of the stuff later. All right. So good luck with it. Let me know if I can help.